if we really want to push for those values, they say are more personal to us, whether it's stuff like equity or accessibility or sustainability or all these other things that I think a lot of us show up as individuals. In order to get those to happen, that means we have to kind of be brave, and we have to push for some new ways to approach decision making. We might have to adjust how we approach things. That's an act of bravery, but it's also honoring ourselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Adam from Tech Circus, and I'm joined here today by Ryan Rumsey, the CEO of Second Wave Dives, and he's here to tell us more about his upcoming talk at UX Live online this month. So welcome Ryan, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thanks so much, Adam. It's good to be here.
We'd love to learn more about your talk at the conference, but we'd also like to learn a bit about your book, if that's okay, the Business Thinking for Designers. I've started giving it a read. It looks really interesting. It draws on experiences I can see from your own roles that you've had within design. Was it your experiences from this that led to you wanting to write about business-oriented thinking towards design?
Yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with my experiences that I went through, and a lot of also to do with what I thought were the sort of ways to communicate, kind of broad knowledge that sort of was being taught at the time. I was saying those aren't really working for me in the same sense, and I think it was kind of also based on like I went through a lot of painful moments and a lot of challenging moments, and if there's anything I can do to share that like helps people go through those a little bit faster, or with a little less, say, pain or something, that's kind of what was behind the book. And so sure, very much around my experiences, but also very much about around how those experiences affected me, and then hearing so many from so many others how similar experiences were affecting them as well.
I suppose from that, would you have any tips that you could give to people that would maybe help them to sort of measure their own worth within the professional environment?
Well, I think there's so much of this that is starts with this root of like, you have worth. You are absolutely, you have worth. There's a reason that an organization has hired you. You start from that standpoint of having worth. But I would also say that a lot of times when we're talking about kind of measuring or communicating or trying to show how it's, say, different than what was before, a lot of that measurement, the quickest tip is to sort of say, like, you have to be able to sort of baseline. You have to be able to maybe even look back as a historian and look at, say, even if you don't have any measures in place, your colleagues might have measures in place. What were those measures like before you got there? What were those measures like as you've been there for a while? And starting to sort of see how those start to track. And what I would say is like that's a great start, and it's not causation. You're not the cause of those metrics improving, but it begins to help you build up this case that says, what's interesting? There's an interesting pattern happening here that, since I've arrived or since other designers have arrived, we see these things moving in positive directions. Let's go keep doing that. Let's see if we can be a little bit more diligent about that. Can we be a little more intentional about that? And so that's where I would say the one of the fundamental tips is a lot of times it's like, be a historian first. You don't necessarily have to have your measures in place. You can more kind of see, what else is going on besides you, perhaps in with peers or organizations that are a little bit mature or a little bit more further down this process. I would say too, there's when we talk about just impact or measuring that value, there's really kind of three core skills. There's some new communication skills, there's some relationship skills, and then there's really what I would say are analytical skills. And analytical skills are probably the sort of easiest to learn for a designer that is not necessarily taught to us. We're taught more of like the creative problem solving, but there's very analytical methods out there that allow us to just do things like pros and cons. An example of analytical analysis is called SWOT analysis. And it's just a 2x2 grid, and it's a very simple way to sort of say, here are the pros and cons of what we're going to do for us. Here are the pros and cons, like maybe as we show up in the market. And it's those types of skills, those analytical skills, that can be really sort of help you nudge and show how you're making impact in a different way.
Okay, sure. So I suppose as well, as you say, if you're sort of coming into a team and if some of those processes are already in place, I guess it's kind of a case of over time that cementing into a team and then going further into the business.
Right. And over time, what we also have to understand, just sort of basics of measuring, is that it takes time, especially from scratch. There's this thing that we talk about a lot. I think the designers are always saying, like, what are the right metrics? What are the right metrics? And what we really kind of need to know from just a basic sort of math level is that most metrics are made up of multiple measures. So, you might have one metric for, say, satisfaction or retention or adoption. But to get that metric, you actually have to measure like 3 or 4 different things. And each one of those 3 or 4 different things kind of needs to be in place for a little bit before you can kind of get a baseline for that metric. So like measuring takes time, and we're looking for these little sort of ways to kind of nudge that along rather than this big bang, oh, at the end of 6 months, we're going to show all the metrics kind of thing.
In that case, it sort of leads us into what people can expect from your talk at UX Live this month.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to get maybe a little bit more on, hopefully on the sort of emotional side of things, because doing these types of things that are, say, out of our purview, maybe what we weren't taught, or maybe models or experiences that we haven't seen before, I think it's an incredible act of bravery of going out and trying to, say, do something a little bit outside Figma or outside of our normal day-to-day things. And so this talk is like, yeah, if you want to show your impact, it is an exercise in discomfort. It is an exercise of bravery, and exposing how you make decisions can kind of give you less room to hide, right? It's making you more accountable for future decisions. And yes, that can be a little bit scary. But how we might want to think about it is, if we really want to push for those values they say are more personal to us, whether it's stuff like equity or accessibility or sustainability or all these other things that I think a lot of us show up as individuals. In order to get those to happen, that means we have to kind of be brave, and we have to push for some new ways to approach decision making. We might have to adjust how we approach things. That's an act of bravery, but it's also honoring ourselves. It is about living up to and trying to drive for those, say, bigger values that I think a lot of us as designers, as people who are focused on, say, the experience of the human on the other side. That's kind of me saying, it's what we have to do, and it's bravery, and it's not going to be necessarily painful or not necessarily comfortable. But what an amazing way you can honor yourself, and sort of, no matter, my ultimate goal is to make sure that designers feel comfortable and confident in the work that they've done, even if it doesn't necessarily go the way that they want, that they know that they've done a good job. And that's really about honoring themselves, honoring, the customers, honoring the people that they're trying to make things for.
I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of lessons, a lot of really great lessons for designers to learn there. So that's going to be a really exciting talk. So we really look forward to that and seeing you at the conference.
Likewise, Adam. Thanks so much.